Hello, dear viewers. This is Jason, your favorite storyteller, and I'm back to bring you another story that will make you go sorry what. I hope you're somewhere cozy because we're diving right in. I met my wife in a somewhat different circumstance than most couples. We were first introduced to each other at work. That's not different, you say, and I would counter that since we both worked on the railroad and train service, that qualifies as being a bit uncommon. She worked as a conductor and I'm an engineer at a Midwest terminal. The railroad that we worked for handled delivering various commodities on long-haul runs or possibly locals, which serviced industries in our area. Now here's a short, incomplete basic description of this segment of railroading. My wife and I both worked in what is known as train service, which in general refers to the team of personnel, referred to as the train crew, who actually do the work of moving a train from point A to B, and provide industries with the cars they need or remove the ones that they are done with. The typical crew these days consists of one conductor and one engineer. There are many other people involved in making this happen, but I want to keep this tutorial short and simple. Railroads typically hire folks who have been screened by knowledgeable people to weed out those who cannot perform the medium difficult physical and mental aspects of being able to do the job. What is truer though, the pre-employment screening is to get rid of drug users, lazy people, or those that don't want to work weekends, which is where new hires are needed. It is not a 9-to-5 Monday to Friday life. Being called to duty late at night, or on weekends, with short notice given to report to work is typical of a railroader's life. Oh, and did I mention that most likely, you have no idea of when you'll be back home? So, when the significant other asks, when will you be home? A good answer often is a lousy guess at best. So, why does anyone do it? Good question. The money, benefits, and the pension package are pretty good, so there's that. Also, some of us are just ducking idiots that have it in our blood, and can't come to grips with working a normal job. In general, for the larger railroads, the crews are union employees. Unlike many other industries, where one union represents all of the workers, railroads have many different crafts that are represented by their own specific union. This is complex, and I could write a book here getting into this, but I won't. My wife was hired out on this particular railroad several years after me, and was working at a different terminal, so we hadn't met until 5 years ago when she transferred in. Being a very sexy-looking 27-year-old divorcee, Dinah got the attention of every railroader in the terminal. Train crews, office personnel, and bosses all paid attention. Hell, even the other women were well aware. I'm not saying they wanted to date her, well maybe some did, but everyone took notice, me included. Anyway, with a little arm twisting of a supervisor who owed me a favor, she got assigned to my crew to learn our territory. After enough unpaid time spent with my conductor, she would go before the trainmaster for testing to demonstrate that she was worthy of being qualified on that segment of railroad, and could begin working as a conductor on her own. She was motivated to leap over that hurdle in faster than normal time, as being a divorcee with no mom and dad to foot her bills, she needed an income. I should also mention that she was very intelligent and able to absorb all of the important info Andy Taylor, my regular conductor, and I, Bill Matthews, needed to impart to her so she could operate efficiently and safely. Here again, a discussion on qualifying could get very lengthy, but you now know all you need to for my tale. The other thing that happened during Dinah's qualification process was that she and I seemed to have chemistry. To Andy's great delight, he noticed before I acknowledged its existence, and tortured me daily, telling me that she would own me before the year's end, and that her magnificent peach would be my downfall. He, of course, couldn't get enough of watching her peach as she climbed ladders. Some of them on railroad cars, hell, just to get on an engine you had to climb up a ladder, and didn't he always let her go up first? Truth be told, I got in a position to take in the view as often as possible myself. As I was fully aware that my time hugging Dinah's attention was short, and she'd soon qualify and be out on her own, with other engineers. I felt lucky Andy was not competition for me. He is a bit younger, very fit and very good looking, but he was also very married and loyal to a fault. If you saw his wife, you'd understand. Heather was awesome and took a back seat to no woman. I needed to make a move. Being on long pull runs, it is common at the end of a haul for the crew to go out together for a bite to eat, and, depending on the time of day, perhaps a drink or two. Andy and I typically followed this practice when we reached an away-from-home destination, which meant checking into the hotel, showering, getting something to eat, maybe some TV, phone home, and hitting the bed to get well rested for the run back to the home terminal. The call to man a return train might happen in as little as 8 hours. For us, the sooner it came, the better. When we returned to our home terminal, it was hoped by many of us for a little off time to share with family or friends. Andy loved his family, and his premium seniority would allow him to hold jobs that didn't keep him away from them as much, but they needed money to step into a nicer house. We made money, lots of it. Since being assigned to our crew, Dinah was immediately invited to join us for our post-trip activity, which she agreed to right away, and seemed to appreciate the gesture by us to include her. After the first couple of trips to a distant terminal with Dinah joining us for dinner, Andy decided that I needed help and began to beg off, claiming this or that, leaving the breakfast, lunch, or dinner date to just Dinah and me. I was smitten. Andy knew it, I knew it, hell, I think the whole terminal knew it. Andy's ribbing aside, I decided that I wanted to see if there was a possibility of a future with this mesmerizing creature. I couldn't believe my good luck when she did not object to it being just me. Dinah even giggled and made a joke that Andy might be trying to play Cupid. Looking back, I suppose that was done to test my reaction, and very quickly we both started treating the end of trip ritual less like two coworkers catching a bite to eat, and more like a date. Our relationship was moving forward at a steady pace, but I was afraid that it had not moved fast enough. I wanted my shot with her, but in my mind, she would soon get her test to qualify, and I doubted she would fail. That would mean she would get marked up to whatever job she had enough seniority to hold. In other words, most likely working with some other guy. Smelling her perfume, admiring her figure, drinking in Dinah's sexual being would be enjoyed by some other ducking guy. Yeah, there were several female engineers that she might work with, but the odds were against me. Most of the time it would be a man. Duck. The following week I was shocked to see her report to duty with Andy and me, as I was sure she qualified a day ago when the trainmaster called her into his office after our trip to the home terminal. She told us that she just didn't feel quite ready and asked for another week of qualifying runs, specifically telling the trainmaster that she needed more time with trains containing hazardous material. All train service personnel are trained to handle hazmat cars, but it is a bit more real in actual practice, so her request wasn't unbelievable. I expected that we would get a few more of those types of trains for the next week. Okay, good for me. On the next trip, we got a train of 106 cars, which included 25 cars loaded with nitric acid that needed to be dropped off at a plant some 56 miles away. She would get some real hazmat experience. At dinner, I got a tip from a friend that we would get minimum rest. Even with the threat of a short amount of time off, I asked Dinah if she would like a drink before we called it a night. She said that she'd love one. Going for a broke, with one Jack and Coke down and halfway through another, I told her that I wanted more than being a casual acquaintance of hers. Yeah, I said it just that way, Mr. Smooth, what a joke. I realized that I had probably just blown it when she took hold of my arm and pulled me in for the hottest kiss ever. Damn, I was hoping you were feeling it too, she said softly. The rest of the short night we spent getting to know each other in a more personal way, not like coworkers, but as two people testing the water to see if they want to take it further. Early the next morning we relieved another crew and delivered a hot train to our home terminal. Hot trains are those that are given priority for various reasons. After marking off duty in the computer at our home terminal, Dinah asked if I'd like to come over to her place for dinner. I don't have to tell you my answer. This was what I was hoping for, she was reaching out to me. The evening went well, with some good old-fashioned necking on her couch, which became so steamed that she started to act as if she wasn't sure about what we were doing. To alleviate her uncertainty, I announced that it was time for me to leave, making her decision of whether to have sex with me moot. Her reaction to my sudden withdrawal was hard to read. Maybe relief, but also some disappointment. I was uncertain, but I did feel as though I hadn't lost any points with her due to my response. I was hopeful that she would, instead, appreciate that I didn't try to push her into something. Evidence of my hope was received at her door when the goodnight kiss she gave me curled my toes. That night I learned that she had been married and divorced a cheating husband. It was welcome news to me because I felt very strongly about cheating and cheaters. It was heartening to hear her echo my sentiments on that subject. Our next trip out was a tough one at night. The visibility had been very poor in the driving rain, and we had all been straining our eyes watching for signals and things on or near the tracks that shouldn't be there. When we arrived, we all went to breakfast and checked into the hotel. I promised Dinah to talk later, but I needed a shower and to get some sleep. All three of us, Andy, Dinah, and me, had rooms on the same floor, and when we arrived at her door Andy and I told her goodnight. Being fairly tired she just nodded but added a kiss on my cheek. After she closed her door, Andy chuckled all the way to his room, and said, "Good night, lover," as I opened the door to my room. 4 hours later I heard a knock at my door. It was Dinah. "I can't sleep. There is something that I want to say to you," she whispered while looking at the floor. I opened the door wider and invited her in with a hand gesture. As there is not always a lot of furniture in hotels, she sat in the only chair and I on the bed. "I've been thinking a lot about last time," she said with a sparse description, though I knew immediately it was about my abrupt ending of our makeout session. "I'm not easy. I mean not an easy lay. Sex has to be with my guy, my one and only guy. And I have to be his one and only. Is it a problem for you, for us?" Not in the least, I answered. Are you sure? You looked undecided if you wanted to get that involved with me, she asked. My only concern was that you seemed undecided about me, and I did not want to push you to a place that you weren't ready to go. I was content to wait until I got a sign that you wanted more, I replied. I know that we may get called to work in a few hours, and we need some sleep, but would you be alright with me spending that time with you, in your bed? She asked. That's exactly the kind of sign that I was talking about. Go get your stuff, I said quickly, trying not to let my excitement turn me into a babbling fool. She must have been already packed because it only took seconds for her to open her door and reappear with her grip in hand and a disarming smile. We both took a turn in the bathroom, and I was already under a sheet in my boxers when she emerged with only a towel wrapped around her. Before we do this, let's clarify a few things. Are we now a couple? Are we exclusive? I asked. As an answer, she dropped the towel, crawled into my bed, and said, "You are my guy until you say otherwise." Fortunately for us, the bad weather had not only made our trip out difficult, but also slowed down railroad progress. There had been problems getting crews to and from trains that had caused many delays. The expectation that we were going to be called to duty the instant our legal rest was up turned out to be wrong, and we ended up getting a welcome extra 6 hours before we had to report for duty. After exchanging a couple of texts with Andy about getting something to eat, I began to invent a plan to give Dinah a cover story. I was trying to be protective and didn't want her to be embarrassed if Andy figured out where she had spent the night. She surprised me with a counter-proposal. Unless I'm mistaken, last night we decided to be a couple. I'm not ashamed, are you? I want to announce it to the world. I think Andy should be the first to know. Let's invite him over and we'll go to eat together. No, I'm absolutely not ashamed. The fact is I can't believe my incredible luck landing you as my girlfriend. I'll text him now. He's not going to be that surprised though. You have to know that, right? And he wasn't. A few moments later there was a knock on my door and a voice out in the hall saying, "Hey, you two get your pants on and come on out of there, I'm hungry." So, after that day, everyone knew. Mostly we received a lot of congress, and privately several of the guys would tell me, "You duckin' lucky custard." Or some version of that. An expected problem erupted dashing our newfound bliss. That week after we took another hazmat train east and brought one back, Dinah got qualified and was now able to bid on a job. There were many different types of positions. On some of them the conductor was matched up with an engineer, like Andy and me, but another option was the conductor could mark up on the extra board and fill whatever job was needed. A person's seniority number dictated what job a person could hold. Fortunately, Dinah's number was not too bad, so she'd have some choices. There are many jobs for a conductor without an engineer. Most of those get handled by the extra board, and depending on many factors, life there can be hectic, but also possibly lucrative. I had been working long-haul, fast freight trains, which often are the biggest money makers, and thereby the most sought after. Dinah did not have enough seniority to hold one of those, so we decided to let her take whatever position she could safely hold, and I would bump on, replace the other engineer with lesser seniority than me, the job, so we could spend as much time together as possible. Every once in a while, the tide would shift, people moving around switching jobs, and someone would bump her off the job, and it might be a little while before we could team up again. We did the best we could, and after a year we decided to make our life together permanent by getting married. Fast forward 3 years. I started dropping hints about whether we should consider expanding our family. Dinah's reaction was not what I anticipated. That is, it was more pensive than I expected. While she did not give the indication that it was not something she wanted, there was a notable lack of support. There was something else putting little ripples in our pond beside the cool reception to having babies. Our being able to stay together on the same job had always been somewhat of a challenge, but recently, she had taken a vacation vacancy on a road job, telling me that the intent was to make a little extra money. After that came a series of her choices that seemed as though she wanted to be working separately. The kicker came when we finally were able to get back on the same shift, and I got bumped off of it by an engineer who I believed always stayed with the higher paying jobs. I was pondering why Jim Bedlam would make such a move when I got a text from Andy, requesting that we meet up for a beer soon. The drop-in was selected, and when I entered, Andy was at a booth in the back sucking down a cold one with purpose. I knew immediately that this wasn't going to be pleasant. He never drank fast and never a lot, but there were already 3 empties on his table. I sat down and waved to the waitress for a couple more, and wondered out loud about the news he was going to share. "Well, I see one of us has a ducking problem. You or me?" "I'm sorry. I absolutely hate to be the one to lay this on you, but Jesus Christ, Bill Duck. Come on, Andy, we've been friends too long. You know that whatever it is, I won't hold it against you. Spill it." I was on a run out east and ran into Sly Jenner at the hotel. He had brought in a westbound. We're shooting the sheep, and Dinah's name comes up when he's asking about how you're doing. Sheep. Andy went on to tell me that according to old Sly, her marriage didn't break up because her ex cheated, but because she did. The way our old acquaintance told it, her former husband was one hell of a good guy, Sly's financial guy or something, and was devastated when he found out she was playing around with some other clock. According to the gossip, that was her mo, a few years with the guy then itchy pants, and wham, new blood. Buddy, that's not what I want to hear, but I'm not much for cheap talk, I stated with a bit more confidence than I really felt. Hey, me neither, you know that. But I've been watching. What's with the moves she's been making? Kinda seems like she don't want to be on the same job with you. Did you duck up and are now getting punished? Andy asked. I haven't stepped in it that I'm aware of, unless it's that I asked about having a kid. That ain't all, there's more gab. I heard she asked Jim Bedlam to bump you. Got no proof, but it's going around the terminal. It's also going around that ever since she took that vacancy of Bedlam's conductor, the 2C extra chummy. I thought you needed to know. Oh, and by the way, what job are you going to move on now? I might as well move on to Bedlam's old spot. It has good off days and is a money maker, I replied. Makes sense, and I'll be able to move on there with you in a bit. I have a 30-day move available soon. Be like old times, you and me. Although the main thing right now is you finding out for sure if there's a fox in the hen house. Well, he was right about that. I did need to know what was going on. I also needed to remind myself that there was no proof, and I wasn't going to confront her about some innuendo that may be a crock of sheep. As Sergeant Joe Friday would say, your job. Find out. Her seemingly intentional choice to put us on separate schedules meant that I would often be off duty while she and Jim were working. Their job usually required a lot of sitting around waiting until the industry you were to service was ready. Many of the industrial side tracks have spots that are secluded enough for a male and a female crew member to amuse each other while making a respectable amount of money. It would be relatively easy for me to snoop with binoculars, at least until it was dark outside, then I might have to be a bit more inventive. Another weapon at my disposal was that our company issued all trainmen and engineers a railroad band portable radio, which meant I would be able to hear every order given to them by dispatch over the radio, where they were, and about how long they'd be there. Another possibility that made me sick to my stomach was that she might be entertaining Jim at our home while I was away. So, with some new easy-to-obtain surveillance cameras to cover the house discreetly, and a nifty little voice-activated pen recorder that I figured to slip into a side pouch on her grip, I expected to get some answers soon. Thus, I began the hunt, albeit feeling more than a little sheety that I was going to spy on my wife, and she might be innocent. When I arrived home that day at about 5, Dinah was upstairs getting ready to go to work. I got the recording pen out, launched the app for it on my phone, and made sure it was linked to her Wi-Fi. Her grip was by the door, ready to be taken to work, so I slipped the little tattletale device into a side pouch on her grip. It was set to download to my computer anytime it was within the Wi-Fi's range. Step 1 was complete. Then my anxiety caused a gaffe. When she came downstairs with only minutes left before she had to leave, I nearly tipped my hand. How are you getting along with Bedlam? I asked before I could stop myself. I didn't want her to start hiding things with more care than she might already be doing. A better play would have been to say something else, perhaps anything else. She looked at me with a flash of, was it guilt or apprehension? Both maybe, but quickly recovered and replied with a bit of defensive edginess, we're getting along just fine. Why do you ask? To me, he's always been a bit of an asshole, treating new conductors shitty, like he's got some given right to harass the newbies, I said, struggling to come up with a believable comeback. I'd say that he treats me just the same as any good conductor, she replied. Good, was all I could come up with, and decided to shut up. With no I love you or kiss, she just said, see you later, and left. Step 2 was to install the new surveillance cameras in several locations in our home. I thought about that for a minute, half laughed, then gave out a deep sigh, realizing it was perhaps not a real home anymore, if what I feared was happening. I figured 3 cameras were enough, but I got the 4th for free. The master bedroom, spare bedroom, family room, and driveway were covered. The guy showed me that these higher-end cameras had AI built in and could track and zoom a bit automatically. I ran some tests walking about the field of view in each location, and the results were good. The video was uploaded to a private account on the cloud automatically, and could be accessed by my computer or phone on demand. There was time for me to go on a surveillance run, so I dressed up in some camo hunting gear, got binoculars, my phone and company radio. Their initial orders were given to them by phone, so I had no idea where their power, locomotives, was. Usually, they were on number 14 track at the terminal's yard. Getting to an access point where I could see if their power was there, yet not be seen by anyone else wasn't easy. When I first heard them on the radio getting track clearance, I was far away. By the time I got to where they were headed, they were working. Their next move to service another customer would be made with no delay. To make a long story short, I ran out of time and had no success ascertaining if an affair was happening. I left for home needing to get some rest for my next trip. I reminded myself that it didn't matter that I failed as a spy this first time. If they were already having an affair, or if she was about to cheat, my marriage was over regardless. Dinah came home in the wee hours, showered, and slipped into bed without a word as I pretended to be asleep. I didn't know if she would be in the mood or not. I certainly was not and didn't want to cause her to be suspicious by rejecting her, something that I had never done. I was due to get called early the next day for a trip east which would take me out of town for a couple of days. Extending my absence by taking a couple of personal days would allow me to get a jump on investigating my wife's activities. She would see that the way I had put in for personal time meant that I'd be at an away terminal while I was off. The unusual request would not be lost on her. Why would I request to be off away from home, would be a question that she would ask herself. The more interesting thing was how she would react. Would she call me and inquire as to why I would do such a thing, possibly offering to drive out and spend that time with me? Or would she view it as a lucky windfall of opportunity to play house with a duck buddy? As forecast, I got called, took a train east, and checked into the hotel. My conductor couldn't believe it when I informed him that I was going to be off personal, and wouldn't be going with him on the return train. I then set out to rent a car and check into a new hotel, as the railroad would not pay for my room while I was off. Shortly after getting the car, my cell rang. It was Andy. "What the duck are you up to, Tracy?" he queried, making a not-so-subtle reference to the comic book detective Dick Tracy. Not being sure just how much I wanted to admit to my old partner, I stammered, "Oh, I don't know, just checking up on Dinah, and don't try to bullshit me," he interrupted my effort of a lame excuse. "Duck Andy, something's not right and I gotta know what's going on. I've been expecting you to do something weird." "I was fixing to call anyway. I've been doing some snooping too. You know that I've always got your back," he said, then went on to tell me several things that, while not proof of infidelity, put Dinah in a very bad light. It all kept coming back to her in Bedlam. He reminded me that this was thin evidence, hearsay and all, but why would that prick leave a money job for that one? Sure, some locals did pretty good money-wise, but not the 6 p.m, that's why most of us didn't want it. I was only on it so I could spend the maximum time with my wife. "I know what you're thinking, buddy. I can only come up with one reason, same as you. He's there for Dinah," and he spit out exactly what was on my mind. "We both know that he's a self-proclaimed clocksman," and he continued, "likely, he'll not keep her long. Usually dumps them after a few months. What do you want to do? Duck him up?" Sure, I wanted to beat the living sheep out of that deckhead if he was doing my wife. But I needed facts. I might well lose my job if I launched into him. Then what if I found out that the rumors were just ugly false gossip? Besides, though I'm no slouch, fairly fit and all, Jim Bedlam was a big powerful man who played linebacker at a Division II college, until he got injured and couldn't afford to stay in school without scholarship money. I surely didn't want to engage him in a fair fight, only to be laid out, and then find out I was wrong about them having an affair. The play was for me to ask Andy to keep snooping, and for me to see if my surveillance measures revealed anything. Andy and I agreed to compare notes after dinner. As I sat alone at the dining table, my supper was served, as was the first several nails to the coffin of my marriage. Having sat down to eat, I ordered, then opened my laptop to a live feed of the cameras I had placed around my home. No one was home, but that wasn't unexpected. Her job had just gone on duty, and would be working at this time of day. The next check was the recorder that I slipped into her grip, which downloaded all recordings every time it came in range of my home Wi-Fi. Nothing there either, so I decided to visit the bar and have a couple of drinks. About 2 hours later, I got an alert that there was some activity at the house. It turned out to be Dinah moving about inside and changing clothes. No audio files had been downloaded when she walked into the house. I quickly realized that I had missed one authorization needed to start the recorder to do its thing. I clicked the required box OK, and the device was then ready to work. Dinah had been getting ready to go out again, though from the way she was dressed, it did not look like a date. Her phone beeped and she answered, but she had moved into the kitchen, and the living room mic was too far away to hear anything meaningful. Fortunately, she had taken her grip with her to put it next to the door where she always leaves it between jobs. I decided to order another drink and wait until the little recorder downloaded to the app. I'd hear it then. It didn't take long. As soon as she finished talking, she got in her car and drove off. Seconds later, the app on my phone announced that a new audio file was available. I wasn't prepared to hear what that audio file would reveal. "Jim, yeah, it's me. Listen, I know we're having fun, but you've got to back off on that idea of rubbing Bill's nose in it. The other side of the conversation, what Jim was saying was not recorded. Had she been driving with her grip with her instead of her purse and the Bluetooth in her car engaged, I would have heard his end of what I was becoming sure of, that my wife was ducking this prick. No, I'm not going to do that, he's a good guy, and the truth is I love him and need to keep this recreational thing with you under wraps. A pause while Jim must have been talking. Yes, of course, I love your big deck. Another pause. Listen, yes I know Bill took a train east and took some personal time there. I'm worried he suspects something. Look, those little games that we've been playing are fun, really exciting actually. You pounding away at me as we move down the track with the engine rocking, is beyond anything I've ever done, but the last time when you kept at it as we approached the stop signal, Jesus, that was so intense. We are so lucky you were able to reach over and set the air brake to get us stopped in time. Another pause. I know, can you imagine if we ran through a stop signal, and somehow it came out that you had your deck buried in me, and that's what caused the blunder? What if we slammed into another train? Another pause. Alright. I know we said it would be fun to spend a night together. Another pause. Okay, just this once. I'm home now, but since we got off early today I want to go out shopping and won't be back for a little longer. Go over to the mall and park near the bank at 11 o'clock, I'll pick you up, and we can slip in the house through the garage so no one will see us. Last pause. Yeah, okay. See you at 11. I thought to myself, well, there you have it. Positive proof that my marriage is over, and I likely have video evidence to use against her before tomorrow. All that's needed now is for me to decide how to get some satisfaction. Duck those two, duck them both, but how? I called Andy and filled him in on what I had just learned. He told me to not do anything stupid, don't contact her or tip her off as to what I knew. Lastly, he said, come to my house in the morning, and we'll put together a plan that will take them both down hard. As midnight approached, I knew that the video evidence against my wife was probably piling up megabyte by megabyte, but I couldn't bring myself to look at it. Sleep that night was difficult, but eventually exhaustion won out. At breakfast, Andy called and asked if I was on my way and if any useful video got recorded. I told him that I was just about to start back, and that though there were files recorded on my security site, I couldn't bring myself to watch any of them. Andy, I'm going to ask a tough favor of you, watch them for me. All I need to know is if it's as bad as I think. Then I passed on the login info and password to him. 4 hours later I was at the outskirts of town and gave Andy a call. He answered, it's at least as bad as you thought, worse. Meet me at the dewdrop now. When I walked in, Andy had us a table in the corner away from the few people getting some lunch. I've got an idea, but it may be too extreme for you, he said. I'm not sure there is anything that I would consider over the top, I answered. Well, here's an idea that I've been spinning around in my devious little head all morning. That business that our horny crew was talking about, having sex while the train is moving, even when they are coming into a stop signal. They repeated it again on the videotape last night. Clear as hell they confessed to being excited by taking such a deadly chance, Andy related. What good does that do me? I asked. Leverage, my boy, very effective leverage. Anyway, more on that later. I've got a way to stick it to both of them, Andy claimed, then continued. Years ago, when we were on strike and management was trying to bust the union by running the trains themselves, I built a device. It could be quickly attached to a signal, and could show a clear indication instead of the stop signal that was actually being displayed. Christ, Andy, you could get somebody killed that way, I exclaimed. Nah, I never used it. Too worried about something going wrong, I guess. Plus I didn't trust anyone enough to help me carry out the disruption in a way that nobody got hurt. Now I got a partner I know that I can count on to pull this off with no damage or harm to anyone. I thought this through, brother. Working together, by listening to our company radios and using cell phones to ensure we know what trains are moving, and where we only spring the trap if all of the pieces are in place. What we'll be watching for is the dispatcher's intent to hold the 6 p.m. job at CP35 like they often do while he runs a westbound that is to clear up on the Sandy River sighting. As you know, this often means a wait of at least an hour at that CP point. If these two pieces fall into place, there will be plenty of time to scurry up the signal mast and install my device, and the dummy green clear indication will show in place of a red stop signal. As soon as our hapless eggs train blows through that false signal, all hell will break loose, but 10 minutes after they run through it, hell before they even get stopped, the device can be removed, and our duo will have a sheepload to explain. No damage to any equipment or personnel at all, perfect. There's more, but I better let you digest what I've said so far, Andy quipped. Duck, you think that can really be pulled off? I asked. You bet your ass, Andy replied confidently. Duck her and duck him, I'm in, I replied, possibly allowing the emotion of my wife betraying me to override good sense. We had a plan, so all that was left to do was play possum at home with Dinah, get Andy to bump the conductor on Bedlam's old job, which was mine now, and since we'd be essentially working the opposite hours of Dinah and Jim, wait for the stars to align. About a week later, as we were going off duty, Andy showed me the train movement sheet, and two things looked good. First, it appeared a westbound train would be zipping through on the single line, and clear up a sandy river. Dinah's train was likely to be held at CP35 until the westbound clears up on the siding and restores the switches to normal. Later that night I was in position, hidden at the CP point. My cell rang and Andy related that the expected train had been launched westbound toward me, but was hours away. I heard Dinah call a signal only a few miles away, and realized she and her duck buddy were also headed for Destiny. My quick-to-assemble deer stand ladder was ready and I was up on the signal and had Andy's device installed quickly. I secured my ladder and backed away for a look. What should have been a bright red stop signal was looking every bit like a very green clear indication. I guess that when Dinah and Jim saw this they would believe the dispatcher decided to run them first, or that the westbound had cleared up and would release all brakes, and not stop short of CP35. It happened just like Andy forecasted. As Dinah began the routine call out for the signal, starting with the engine number, I keyed my mic. Since I was very close to the remote antenna that the dispatcher's radio link used, I hoped my small radio interrupted or blocked her call out. 2 minutes after Dinah sailed through the false signal, the dispatcher was screaming at them over the radio to stop immediately. In another 8 minutes, I was packed up and gone. In the following days, Andy and I had only second-hand knowledge of what had taken place in the aftermath of the Duck Buddies' unfortunate faux pas. We understood that they insisted with great emotion that CP35 was in fact clear, and not a stop signal as the dispatcher's board had recorded. I mentioned to Andy that the recording tape on the engine would exonerate the crew, but Andy just chuckled. My friend, I think there will be two problems with that. First, remember years ago when they first wanted to install those cameras and mix on the locomotives? Remember them guaranteeing that they were only there to prove that the engine was blowing its horn and ringing the bell at road crossings? The idea was that some drunk who had pulled onto a crossing and got hit by the train could not claim that the crew was not giving a proper warning. It ended with the union agreeing to the installation, as long as the cameras were never used to prove a crew guilty of a transgression. The railroads went along with that, but surprisingly also included that the cameras would not be used to exonerate a crew either. Andy continued, I told you before that I had one other trick. I let it slip, through a couple of other guys, to the trainmaster that you had told me of what the sex duo said on your surveillance recording. I understand that management is really pissed at the possibility that two of their employees were having thrill sex approaching signals. Honestly, I don't think they care if they were ducking this time or not. They want them fired. Holy sheep, I exclaimed. They are both out of service, pending investigation right now, he told me, but I wasn't surprised. Railroads act swiftly when it comes to taking employees off of the job and marching them to be drug tested after an incident, but the investigation might take some time, as the company assembles the facts. In your upcoming divorce, you may be able to leverage a settlement from Dinah greatly in your favor, in exchange for not releasing the audio or video recordings of what the two of them were up to on company time. Let your lawyer handle all of that. He'll need to move fast though, because to be significant the threat will have to come before the railroad has the investigation. The deputies might be convinced that without that extra evidence damning them, they might be able to get their jobs back in a year or so. Even Bedlam might lean on her to sign any divorce settlement, just to have a chance at getting back to work, Andy supposed. I hired a lawyer and informed him of the recordings that I had, their dubious nature, but potential as a threat to get my wayward wife to sign a favorable settlement. He agreed that their use was time critical and would get right on it. I was also schooled on doing all of the financial stuff, which I would get right on. After avoiding Dinah for days by checking the home cameras, I decided it was past time to confront my soon-to-be ex-wife and kick her to the curb. She was at the kitchen table when I walked into the house. I spoke first. You ducking sleazy cheat. Bedlam. Ducking Bedlam. Not only are you a lousy excuse for a wife, but from what I hear you're also a pretty lousy excuse of a conductor. Can we talk? She asked quietly. We can, as long as you are not going to start reciting the cheater's handbook of excuses. I am so sorry. Is there any chance for us? I really do want a family with you. Let me think. No, and hell no. What I want is for you to get out of this house today. Do not call, text, email, or any other attempt at communication with me. My lawyer's info is in the packet that you will be served with. I already know your lawyer's name. He called me. Duck, he called Jim too. Jim's had me on the phone for an hour, insisting that I sign the settlement that you're offering, and I haven't even seen it yet. I didn't even know that you'd even found out about Jim and me until he called talking settlement, she said, sobbing. Don't worry, you'll see it soon just as fast as they can type it up and get it here. Please believe me, I am very sorry. I don't want to lose you, she said, opening the cheater's handbook. That ship sailed. We are done. Over. I don't give a flying duck what you want, what I want is you gone. Today. I don't know where I could go. Call your duck buddy and move in with him, get a job in Vegas as a whore, I don't care. Just get out of here. We can get past this, I know we can, she protested. For how long? 3 or 4 years until you get the itch again. Yeah, I checked up on you. I should have looked into your past before I got involved with you. I found out too late that's all the fidelity that you are capable of. You lied when you claimed your first husband cheated, it was you who couldn't keep it in her pants. Then Dinah looked deep into my eyes and said, they're going to fire me. You did this to us, I know it. I don't know how it would even be possible, but I can see it in your face. You did it and you want me to know that you did. Well, I suppose Jim and I both deserve what we're getting, but I know you did it to get even. I smiled. Yes, I wanted her to know that she was right, that I had done it to her, but I would never actually admit it. Duck her and him. Look, do what my lawyer told you to do, sign the papers when they come. If you make me go to court to get a divorce, I'm taking the recordings with me. If that happens it will be in the public record, and the railroad will have access to proof of what you and that sheephead were doing while on duty. Good luck getting your job back then. Alright, I'll sign. I need that job, please don't take that away from me. I don't know why I can't control it, being with other men. I really wish I could have been your wife forever, she said, throwing her last sympathy card on the table. Dinah, get the duck out now. She got up and drove away, but returned in a couple of hours with a haul-it-yourself type of trailer attached to her car. I had already started bagging her things and was unceremoniously throwing them out into the yard so that the neighbors could witness her being literally thrown out. You just had to humiliate me, didn't you? She whined. Just as you humiliated me in front of the entire terminal, I snapped back. I found out later that as the actual last-ditch effort, she called Andy to beg for his help. Andy looked at the caller ID, then turned it toward his wife to see. Heather motioned for him to give her the phone. Well, if it isn't the dumbest witch on the planet. You sure did duck up, girl. They'll need to change the lyrics to the song. I've been working on the railroad, because you sure as hell blew it. Oh, my husband has something he wants to say. She handed the phone over. Dinah, sign the papers and let my buddy get on with his life. If you do that, you might be able to get your job back sooner. You badly hurt the best man I know. Don't ever call me again. Epilogue. As for the duck buddies, their unions were able to make a deal. By threatening to go public with news of a malfunction of a signal and nothing else but hearsay evidence that the railroad's lawyers decided not to use, the company agreed to allow Jim and Dinah to return to work, albeit with some restrictions. Rumor was that the brass did look at the engine's onboard video, and saw that the signal did look green, clear, but could not explain how that was possible, and didn't want the system's integrity questioned. The union's play got the cheaters back to work, but local management insisted that they work elsewhere, preferably at the end of the line. To get back to work, making money quickly, the two duck buddies agreed to accept their punishment of lost time, 4 months, and transfer to a distant terminal. They never became a couple, I was told. Of course, I replied, I don't give a duck what they do. As for me, I was grief-stricken for over a year. I eventually broke out of my shell when Andy introduced me to a very nice young woman who happened to be one of his kids' teachers. I was enchanted with Linda. No, not the February sucks Linda. Even though she was somewhat younger than me and had also suffered a bad relationship. We both agreed that there was some chemistry and wished to see where it might lead. Progress was slow, and we seemed to step on each other's toes even while trying hard not to, but the attraction was undeniable, and both of us pressed our relationship forward. At the end of 4 months as a couple, the battle was over. We had both successfully exorcised our demons of the past, and won each other's hearts. With an absence of lingering doubt, our wedding was set. 2 years after that, our first child arrived, a boy named Andy. We are working on a sister for him. With love from Linda and young Andy filling my heart, Dinah is nothing more than a distant bad memory that no longer haunts me. And that's it for today's story, friends. If you enjoyed today's story, leave a like and comment before you leave. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button so you don't miss any video. Goodbye for now, and I'll see you in the next video.